Should you guys mute each other if you're not talking?
Okay, so I'm going to start us off with the affirmative. We're debating werewolves versus vampires, basically. So imagine this. You're a typical Southern Californian who loves the beach and warm sunny days. Then one day, you're walking from the beach back to your car after sunset, and a vampire approaches you. He murders you and drinks your blood. You wake up, and you're pale, and you're basically dead. Now, you can never go to the beach again. All right, so problem with vampires is that vampires kill and murder is just wrong in most senses. And you can't choose not to murder if you're a vampire, because if you don't drink the blood of a person, then you'd be weak and you can't die of hunger because vampires are immortal. So you have no choice but to murder to survive. And werewolves, on the other hand, do not have to hunt like that. They're only a werewolf when they transform on a full moon, which is like once a month. And they're just regular humans the rest of the time. They scratch and bite to transform others into werewolves, but they don't have to kill people at all. They can choose to eat like other kind of meat, and they don't have to kill humans. Another problem with vampires is that their weakness, they have a lot of weaknesses. One, some of them being crosses, garlic, wooden stakes. The worst one being the sun. They cannot do anything unless it's at night, and this forces them to live an abnormal nocturnal life. They can't experience the world in any fun ways, and not a lot happens at night, so it's kind of a downer for them. On the other hand, werewolves, they're human most of the time, and according to Diffin.com, they also have a six-pack in human form. So they can go to the beach, can do whatever they want, experience life, and they can have a rockin' bod while they're at it. Another downside is that vampires are pretty ugly and pale, and they can't do anything about it because they're always going to not be able to go into the sun. So werewolves, on the other hand, are better in the sense that they don't have that problem. They're just normal humans, and they're actually really strong because they have that animal-like characteristic about them. Something else is that vampires are immortal, and immortality might sound cool at first, but in reality it's actually scary, and not everyone wants to be immortal. Immortality means that it's never being able to die, and that means they won't ever really have purpose in life because they don't have like one life to live. They just never die, so they don't really have like passion for things. They're just kind of always alive, always just doing what they have to do. Werewolves, on the other hand, they have a normal human lifespan, so they could literally do anything. They could have a family, they could have a love life, get married, and the immortality problem would not be an issue for them. Also, when you become a vampire, you can become a vampire when you can be born a vampire, cursed a vampire, or bitten to be a vampire, which is a lot of ways to become a vampire. Not many people, I don't think, would choose to be a vampire over a human. Werewolves, on the other hand, you can only become a werewolf if you're scratched or bitten, and you're still alive. You're just like scratched or bitten. So there's less ways to become a werewolf. I'm sure no human wants to become either, but yeah, in all, werewolves have more positive aspects than vampires do. That's all I have to argue.
Okay, so I do have a few things to dispute about that. So yeah, vampires do drink blood, but look at what a werewolf does. They completely tear human flesh and destroy their bodies, which is 10 times worse. And nobody said that vampires actually have to kill humans. Yes, they drink their blood, but nobody said that they have to absolutely drink them. Also, six packs. Who said vampires don't have six packs too? But yes, I do agree they are pretty pale because they can't go into the sun because it harms and kills them. But just like many other girls nowadays, there is self-tanner. Talent is pretty cool in my opinion because they can choose if they want to die or live forever because they do have that choice still because they know their own weaknesses such as like the sun, wooden stakes, and I'm going to go into more detail in a minute or two of why vampires are superior, but I just wanted to refute those reasons first. So, going into my first negative, vampires rule
Wait,
and
hang on. Sorry, real quick. I think just the next step is the cross-examination.
that was the cross examination, wasn't it?
Okay. And in that case, never mind, because I thought you were supposed to ask questions. I don't know what I'm supposed to do as a moderator. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll ask some questions. So, what made you say that werewolves harm less people than vampires? Because what I stated was that vampires don't have to drain the body of blood. Yes, they drink human blood, but werewolves absolutely rip their prey to shreds.
I only said that as I know very little about this topic. I've never seen, so I wouldn't have a very reliable source given the like 25 minutes we had to search. In my defense, I can say that because what I did research, and off of my basic knowledge that vampires basically their prey becomes undead, so they do have to become a vampire, become whatever it's called. And werewolf, any my research that said that they prey on humans or in what way they prey on them. I just saw that they eat meat raw or cooked, which sounds a little more civil than drinking blood.
Okay. So that was the only question I had for you this round. So I'm going to go into my first. Vampires rule and werewolves drool, and everybody knows it because seriously, they are pretty much scary, slobbery dogs. Werewolves live a lifetime just like an average human does, while a vampire lives or unlives forever. Mortality is off the table for vampires, which means centuries of fun as long as one avoids a stake to the heart, as opposed to a werewolf who, again, just has the average human lifetime. Yes, vampires can't go out during the day, but big deal because who strikes in broad daylight? Nobody. You know who goes out at night? The people who are down to have a good time, and people who are careless, making it so easy to sneak around and attack. So, it is a very small trade-off, in my opinion. Living forever is just a lot longer than living a lifetime, even if vampires only get to run around at night. Here's another thing. It is so easy to spot a werewolf, but vampires look like the rest of us, so it is very easy to mistake them for a human, which makes it even cooler because they can decide if they want to be out in hiding disguised as a human or embrace their true selves as a vampire, when werewolves don't have the choice when it's a full moon. Also, not to mention that werewolves are stuck looking like dogs and unable to conversate with humans when they are in their true forms. But the most important reason why vampires are superior is because they have powers 24/7 while vampires have to rely on a full moon, which doesn't happen as often. If the full moon wasn't intact, they would be completely defenseless. Speaking I've been speaking of defenseless. Werewolves can get killed by any normal human weapon, such as a sword, a gun with silver bullets, or anything that has to do with silver. While vampires can only die from special things such as a stake to the heart. And who carries around a stake, right? There's a lot more people who carry around pocket knives or carry a gun. So, going into more detail about the powers that vampires have, vampires can fly while werewolves can only jump high. The thing is, if a vampire needs to get from one end of the cliff to the other, they can easily fly over, but werewolves would have to get a running head start, jump, and just hope they make it. When you think about it, they do weigh a lot more, therefore meaning they're less agile. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction, vampires always take the lead. And your cross-examination. You're on mute.
Thank you. I'll start by asking this. Would you rather be a human or a vampire?
I would like to be a human in most of my life, but when I'm on my deathbed, I would certainly love to be a vampire, just for the experience.
But you would choose probably humanity over vampire, like in the long run. Okay. And then I was curious as to where you got your information that vampires can fly.
Well, a lot of people associate vampires with bats. And whether it is flying like this or jumping, which means in the air for their long periods of time, they can run as fast as light. And so when they jump, it's almost as if they're flying. So that would be my refute.
All right. I did not see it in their strengths that I researched, so I was just curious. They do have good agility though, so I'll give you that. That's all I had. That's all the questions I had for you.
Okay.
So, okay. Now it's okay. So I liked the points you made a lot. You did mention that werewolves are like big dogs. They are like werewolves, but it's only one day of the month typically. I mean, some of the sources said that they could be a werewolf if they wanted to, or in other moon phases, but typically it's one day a month that they're like a drooly dog. And then the rest of the month, they get to be human, and they might have animalistic characteristics while they're human, but it doesn't necessarily make them gross. You know, there's some hairy men out there that's nothing we should shame. So there's that. They only transform once. I also thought you mentioned that they can die from silver. However, dying from silver is way cooler than dying from a piece of wood. One of my sources also said, Diffin.com, said that if they enter a house without being invited in, it can kill them, which is a very interesting way to die. I would say I would rather be shot by a silver bullet than die from going into someone's house. It's just silly. Trying to think of the other points I can make really quick. Yeah, I wanted to try and refute your vampires rule, werewolf's rule. I don't agree with that, but I have not created a riddle back for that yet. So that's all I have.
Okay, before I get started again, or wait, is it your turn?
No, you're back on for 5 minutes.
So before I get started with some more arguments, I wanted to about dying when a vampire enters into someone's house without being invited. However, if I was a vampire, I could easily trick someone to be invited into a house by compelling them. So many shows show that vampires do this compelling thing where it's basically they're playing mind tricks with a human, tricking them into getting what they want. So if I was that vampire, I would use my compelling abilities and therefore be invited in from their choice. So what I was going into before, whether it is fiction or nonfiction, vampires always take the lead. I mean, look at Twilight, for instance. I had to bring it up. Who got the girl? Edward the vampire or Jacob the werewolf? You guessed it, guys. It was Edward because he was better able to protect Bella, still had that bad boy vibe, and was just all around better. If a vampire and a werewolf were facing each other 1v1, a vampire would absolutely destroy the werewolf. Honestly, it wouldn't take much because the vampire would just have to shoot the werewolf with a silver bullet or two. And vampires, we know, would die from a stake in the heart. But what little paw could grab that stake and stab it straight in the heart? Not the easiest target. Even without a gun, vampires would still succeed. We know that werewolves are generally just as intelligent as anyone else when not in beast form. However, when they are in beast form, they have that bloodlust, and they lose control rather easily. Vampires and werewolves have been at war for hundreds of years, and it's very obvious that given the amount of time that has passed, vampires have developed tactics for dealing with werewolves. While werewolves are fully capable of the same, but when not in beast form. In beast form, not so much, making it easier for the vampire yet again. Vampires would easily win in most cases due to his or her intellect, spending time studying their opponent, and of course, their special powers. Not to mention that, yes, vampires do have those disadvantages such as the sun, the stake, and entering the house without being invited, but I have disputed all three of those arguments. And if there's a chance that an encounter does happen, we know up to hand in hand werewolves in their wolf form would have a fighting chance, but a vampire who is out for their midnight snack would have the lead. Back to you, Sage.
All right. So let's finish this off. So I really liked your point about the mind trick thing. They are witty, so that was a very good refute. You mentioned that werewolves, they can't really control their temper, but in solution to that, I mean, there are people out there who can't control their temper. So I would say that werewolves would be able to get anger management treatment and therapy. And over time, a werewolf could be able to control his temper, and that would be safer for everyone around him. So if he just got that kind of therapy, I mean, any werewolf could, because they're human most of the time. So that would be a solution to the anger problem, an easy fix. You also mentioned a lot about how vampires have overcome werewolves in many scenarios. I can't refute the Twilight scenario because I have not seen it, like I said earlier, but the scary thing of that is vampires are so strong and invincible that could be detrimental to the world and the environment we live in, because they have the ability to overpower almost everything because of their supernatural abilities. So I think for the rest of the world, vampires can actually be seen as more of a threat when a werewolf isn't really as much of a threat, because they can just be shot and they'll, I mean, you know, they'll easily go down, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's still better than being immortal, in my opinion. I'd like to mention that when I questioned you, you said you would rather be a human than a vampire. And werewolves are as similar to humans as it can get. Vampires are just dead, so they're not really human anymore. They're more like a mummy or something. But so in the long run, it's almost as if you chose werewolves. I just like to point that out. And that's all I have to say.
Before we end this really quick, I would still like to refute. So what we're truly arguing is who is better, werewolves or vampires, not who is more like a human. So I just wanted to point that out. And also, you're saying that vampires are so strong and meaning they're detrimental. I would like to thank you for that compliment because that just proves that vampires would win in a fight against a werewolf. Thank you.
All right, so that looks like that is the end of that debate. Good job, both of you. However, me and Christopher have to come to a conclusion of who did a better job. I like how both of you came up with compelling arguments discussing the different aspects of being a vampire and a werewolf. I think that discuss it when it comes to the weaknesses and the strengths, like how you like kind of paired them up against each other. It worked quite well and it was very compelling. So big old thumbs up for both of you. However, I'm going to have to go with Sophia because Sophia came up with arguments which I didn't notice that Sage tried to refute. So in the just a pure debate sense, I think Sophia did do a bit of a better job. Christopher, it is now your turn to decide who
All right.
won, I guess.
First, I just want to say that was the most entertaining debate this year. Good job, well done. I liked how you guys were able to not only cite evidence but just speak passionately about your topic. A lot of good eye contact. I can even feel like real tension between you two guys, which is great. To pick a winner, man. Usually I would have to go with vampires, but I do think Sage provided good arguments, and you know she pointed out that it would kind of suck to live forever. That's a pretty big deal. And overall, yeah, I think Sophia did a great job too. Just you know, being really kind of feisty, but anyways, I'm gonna have to go with Sage for the winner. So.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so I think that's the end of it. I'm going to end the broadcast now.